probably heard the phrase out of sight, out of mind, but when you stop talking to a woman, it's a whole different ballgame. Most men assume that when they stop communicating with a woman, she'll simply wait for the next message or phone call, like a patient little bystander. But here's the truth. When you stop talking to her, she's likely already making decisions you don't even realize. Before you dismiss this as an overreaction or some kind of emotional fantasy, think about it for a moment. Relationships, whether romantic or not, thrive on communication. So when that stops, when silence enters the picture, there's more at stake than just awkwardness. It's not just about her wondering if you're still interested. It's about her reaction to that silence, which speaks volumes more than words ever could. You see, a woman's mind is wired to interpret silence in a way that's quite different from a man's. For a man, stopping communication might just be a temporary lapse in the usual rhythm. But for a woman, it can trigger doubts, insecurity, and sometimes even a complete shift in how she sees the relationship. Women don't just wait around for your next move. They adapt, whether you like it or not. And their actions will speak louder than any explanation you can give. So, in this video, I'm going to walk you through 5 things a woman is probably doing the moment you stop talking to her. Things you may not even realize, but can definitely impact your chances with her moving forward. Ready to find out what happens behind the scenes? Let's dive in. 1. She'll start losing interest fast. Let's face it, women are emotional creatures, and when you stop talking to her, you're pulling the rug out from under her emotionally. Here's the thing, silence can be louder than any conversation. When you go quiet, it's like a red flag. No words, no updates, nothing. It makes her think you're no longer interested in her. Now, it's not that she wants you to be all over her 24/7, but communication plays a huge role in a woman's perception of the relationship. The more you talk, the more she feels you care. Without that regular connection, her mind starts filling in the blanks, and it doesn't usually end well for you. When the texts stop, when the calls stop, her brain tells her she's being ignored, abandoned, or pushed to the back burner. In a woman's eyes, the absence of communication is often seen as the absence of interest, and it's a dangerous cycle for you. The longer the silence drags on, the more she starts thinking, why am I still waiting around for someone who doesn't seem to care? This, my friend, is when interest begins to evaporate. Now let's be clear, you don't even have to be actively avoiding her to cause this. It's just the natural reaction to being left in the dark. If you don't consistently show up in her life, if she's getting nothing from you but silence, she's going to fill that space with doubt and frustration. Every time you don't text or make contact, it chips away at her excitement. It's human nature. She's going to ask herself, why am I putting in effort when he's not meeting me halfway? This question is what leads to her starting to lose interest. Over time, she may start to pull back emotionally or simply mentally check out. Silence kills the spark. So if you think you can stop talking to her for a few days or even weeks and she'll still be just as invested, you're wrong. You're setting the stage for her interest to disappear fast. And when interest wanes, attraction usually follows suit. 2. She'll begin to think you're playing games. Let's break it down. Silence is suspicious. When you stop talking to a woman, it starts to look like you're intentionally pulling back. And for a woman, this can only mean one thing. You're playing games. Now, before you get defensive, understand this. Most women don't like uncertainty. They need consistency, clarity, and reassurance. When you just disappear, even for a short time, her mind naturally begins to wonder, what is he up to? Is he losing interest? Why is he acting like this? Women tend to be overthinkers, and once that silence sets in, they start connecting the dots. She might start questioning your behavior. Were you always this flaky, or is this some new tactic? She wonders if you're just trying to make her chase you, or if you've suddenly decided to distance yourself. It comes across as an emotional game, and women are experts at spotting that. Let's say you've been texting frequently, having great conversations, and suddenly, nothing. The change can be jarring. It doesn't matter how innocent your reason is, whether you've been busy at work, distracted, or just needed space, she won't see it that way. In her eyes, you're now a player who's testing her interest by pulling away and leaving her wondering when the next move will be. This often leads to frustration, confusion, and let's face it, anger. In her mind, you've created this whole dance. She now feels she's in the dark, trying to figure out what game you're playing rather than feeling valued and understood. And once that seed of doubt is planted, it's hard to shake. Here's the kicker. This isn't a game most women want to play. As much as some men might believe a little mystery or making her chase can enhance attraction, this strategy rarely works when you've already built a connection. By going silent, you undermine the rapport you've built and make her feel like the relationship is anything but authentic. If you make her feel like a pawn in your game, don't be surprised when she starts losing respect and backing away. Women prefer transparency over mystery any day of the week. When you're not clear about your intentions and go radio silent, she won't wait around to decipher your next move. She'll simply walk away before she gets burned. 3. She'll assume you're seeing other women. Let's be real here. Silence breeds suspicion, and for a woman, that means her mind starts running wild. When you stop talking to her, even if there's no obvious reason for it, she's going to start assuming the worst. One of the first conclusions she'll reach? That you're seeing other women. It's not necessarily that she wants to jump to conclusions or that she's paranoid. The truth is, when you're silent, you leave space for all kinds of thoughts, and most of them won't be in your favor. She's trying to make sense of the situation, and when you're not giving her any answers, the natural assumption is that you've found someone else to talk to, someone more interesting than her. Remember, women invest emotionally when they feel there's potential, and when communication abruptly stops, it feels like something has shifted on your end. The silence makes her think you're diverting your energy elsewhere, and because you're not making an effort to reassure her, that assumption grows stronger. This assumption doesn't mean she's necessarily insecure. It just means her mind is doing what most people's minds do when faced with uncertainty. It's looking for the answer. And when it's left unanswered, it tends to create a scenario where she imagines you're out there talking to other women or finding something or someone else to focus on. When you're not actively reassuring her that she's a priority, the only logical conclusion in her mind is that you're out there exploring other options. Whether or not that's actually the case is beside the point. The point is, her confidence in the relationship erodes, and the doubt creeps in. It becomes almost impossible for her not to wonder, if he's not talking to me, who is he talking to? That kind of silence doesn't just confuse her, it makes her feel unimportant, and once that doubt sets in, it's hard to get back on track. No one likes to feel like they're last in line, waiting around while someone else grabs all the attention. If you aren't communicating with her, she's going to fill that gap with the belief that you've found someone else, leaving her feelings of insecurity and disconnection to linger. 4. She'll start to pull away too. Here's a hard truth. If you stop talking to her, don't be surprised when she starts pulling away too. It's not some clever strategy she's consciously trying to play. It's just how people respond to emotional neglect. When one side stops giving, the other side starts to withdraw. That's how relationships work. It's a simple matter of self-preservation. Now, I know there are some guys out there who believe that ghosting or pulling back on communication will somehow make a woman chase harder or increase her interest. That's a dangerous mindset. When you stop showing up, she'll start feeling less involved. It's as simple as that. She's not going to chase someone who's not making the effort to stay in touch. Why should she? When someone doesn't show interest, it's natural for the other person to start looking for the same in return. And here's where a lot of men go wrong. They expect women to keep making the emotional investment when they've backed off. What you need to realize is this: women respond to connection. When the communication dies down and you become distant, it forces her to confront whether this is a relationship that's actually worth her time. When you're not reaching out, she'll start emotionally detaching herself too. She's not going to wait forever, and this process of her pulling away might happen without you even noticing. So, by the time you've realized she's distant, it could be too late to reverse the damage. Look, it's time to wake up. She's not going to put in all the work by herself. Relationships are a two-way street. It's easy to sit back and think that she'll just be patient or keep the spark alive while you go on about your business. But the reality is, when a woman starts pulling away, it's a sign. It's her way of protecting herself from getting hurt and getting too emotionally involved with someone who isn't showing up. So ask yourself, are you really ready to put in the effort, or are you just waiting for things to fix themselves? Stop underestimating her. Stop assuming that silence doesn't mean anything. If you don't put in the work to stay emotionally present, don't expect her to stick around and do it for you. Remember, pulling away works both ways. Make the effort now, before the emotional distance grows into something you can't get back. 5. She'll move on without you. Here's the truth. If you keep pushing her away with silence, she will eventually stop waiting around. Women aren't just going to sit there forever hoping you'll remember them or decide to come back around. Eventually, she'll move on. It may seem harsh, but it's not about being cold. It's about survival. People can only take so much emotional abandonment, and if she doesn't see any effort from you, she has to protect her own feelings. You need to understand that she won't wait forever for a person who isn't emotionally available. That's not about her being desperate or impatient. It's about self-respect. If you're giving her nothing to work with and continuously leave her in limbo, you're pushing her toward that realization. You're teaching her that your silence means you're not as invested as she is. And when that happens, her options open up. She begins to look at other potential relationships. And ultimately, she might decide that it's healthier to move on rather than staying stuck in the uncertainty. Now, don't get it twisted. This doesn't mean she's going to drop everything and start dating someone new right away. But make no mistake, she will stop waiting for your attention and she'll start focusing on her own life. She'll spend less time wondering about you and start giving her emotional energy to other areas: friends, hobbies, new opportunities, and yes, possibly other men. So here's the point. Don't assume you have endless time. If you've been silent, if you've been inconsistent, understand that she has her own needs and expectations, and she won't let her life pass her by, waiting for someone who is emotionally unavailable. The longer you delay acting, the faster she will detach emotionally and physically. If you care at all about the relationship, you need to stop relying on the hope that she'll stick around just because you've been there before, or because you finally decide to reach out. It doesn't work like that. At some point, she'll hit a tipping point, and that's when the door closes. It's cold, it's tough, but it's reality. So ask yourself, are you ready to step up and show her you care? Or are you willing to let her go before she decides it's over for good? Here's the hard truth. If you're not putting in the effort to communicate, you're silently telling her she's not worth your time. And that's the quickest way to lose her, not just emotionally, but completely. You have to show up for the people who matter to you. Silence isn't a strategy, it's a red flag. So if you've been thinking your actions don't have consequences, now's the time to rethink that approach. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Comment below with your experiences, and I'll personally reach out to connect with you. Let's keep the conversation real.